Good evening, and welcome to another edition of Surfing the Net, a presentation of Howard Payne University. Join us now as we explore the Internet and find out how to better utilize one of the more important communication means of our century. And now, here are your hosts, Chris Dooley and Gary White.
Good evening, and welcome to Surfing the Net. We are broadcasting live straight from the television studios of Howard Payne University's television studios, and we are tuned to the only interactive television show on the Brownwood Television Cable Service. I'm your host, Chris Dooley, and here to my left is my partner, Mr. Gary White, who in real life is my boss. And in this show, he will be taking your questions. Mr. White, do you want to say anything?
Let me add, not only am I his boss, I'm also his professor in one of his classes.
That too.
I'm here to answer your questions. You will be seeing a telephone number going across your screen, and during the course of the show, feel free to call in. I will be at the other end of the line to take your question. Then in the latter half of the program, I will come on air to answer your questions.
That's right. So for the first half of the show, I will be giving a small lecture and a little hands-on demonstration on the computer. And then during that time, Mr. White will be at his station listening to your telephone questions. And so after our brief break, he'll come back and we'll answer the questions that you've called in. Well, we've got a great show for you tonight. I'm real excited about getting back here, but first I have some explaining to do. As you may have noticed, we've been off the air for the last 2 weeks. So let me briefly explain why. April 18th, which was 2 weeks ago, most of our crew was out of town at the National Broadcasters Convention in Las Vegas. And many of you may not realize what all it takes to put this show on, but we've got a really great group of guys that really help us put this show on, and they really deserve that week off. April 25th, which was last week, of course, was the Dove Awards, and so they preempted us that week, and that's understandable. Well, now we've got an excellent show for you, like I said, and we are at our second to the last show for this semester. We have one more next week, and next week we'll have a short review of what we've covered this semester.
And also we're going to talk about what the future holds for us with the Internet.
Yes. But for this show, I thought we may consider some other online services that you can connect to besides just the World Wide Web. For the majority of this semester, we've covered Netscape, which is the World Wide Web on the Internet. And now I think we're getting to the point where you can pretty much find your way around Netscape. You're pretty comfortable with it. We've spent lots of shows on it. But I was thinking it may be time to move on and maybe broaden our horizons a little bit. So I thought, first of all, we'll talk about FTP. And a lot of you have probably heard of FTP. If you have not, it stands for File Transfer Protocol. And that is simply the protocol on the Internet that allows you to transfer files directly. Now, with Netscape, you basically are browsing the World Wide Web and looking through text and viewing graphics and finding information that's out there. But FTP allows you to actually connect to someone's computer and connect to their hard drive that is set up as a server, an FTP server on the Internet, and you can directly go and look through their directories and find a file that you would like to copy to the computer you're getting on the Internet from. And so that's a real handy way if you know exactly what you're going to look for on the Internet and you just want to get on quickly, go straight to that place, grab a file that you need for your own personal computing use. And so it's another thing separate from the World Wide Web. There are several different parts of the Internet, and briefly tonight I want to cover FTP. If we have time, I'll go on to some of the others, but for now we'll talk about FTP. Now, let me explain a little bit about FTP. Like I said, people on the Internet will set up a server, which they allow access to their hard drives. Now, many people will put on a firewall, and that's maybe a new term to a lot of you. A firewall simply states what part of their hard drive they want to give you access to and what part they would like to keep private. Obviously, you can imagine that these servers will not like to give you access to their entire hard drive, but they usually will give you access to a majority of the directories they have and make them available for us to copy their files. And so there's one thing we need to realize. These are the computers, these people that run these servers own these computers, and they really, if you think about it, they don't have to give us access to their hard drives. So one thing I always want to tell people is be courteous when you're using someone else's FTP server. Some will decide to limit the times of day that will allow you to access their hard drive, and some will allow only certain logons. Some might say you can only log on if you're coming from a a registered IP address, and I don't know if we've covered IP addresses, but that's simply the real technical long list of numbers of the internet address that you're coming from. And so a lot of FTP servers may put on some restrictions, and please obey those restrictions, because keep in mind, they don't have to give us access at all. And so at any point in time, they could just simply take off their server and we would no longer have access at all. So please be courteous. One thing that some FTP servers will allow you to do is upload some of your own personal files to the internet server. So if you have an interesting file that you would like to upload to them, there's usually a designated area on the FTP site that will allow you to do that. And again, with the courteous part of this, please do not upload to a part that is not designated for uploads. Don't just throw your files into a place that you're not supposed to. So having said that, let's take a look at some FTP. And hopefully some of you have had a little bit of experience with that, and I'm not going to go too slowly and explain too much of exactly how the FTP works. I'm going to assume that a lot of you have the general idea of what goes on. And you see now we're starting in Netscape, but that's not really where I would like to start. There are several programs that use FTP protocol, and the most popular one I've seen in my experience is called WSFTP. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to hit Alt-Tab, which will go back to my Windows Program Manager. And here you see the program manager that we use currently at the Howard Payne Computer Network on campus. And here you see is our group-wise email program. Here's what I got into to get into Netscape. But here you see there are some other programs. There's FTP, there's Telnet, and there's WS Archie. And if we have time, I may cover Telnet, but we'll just have to see how this show goes. So for now, for this beginning of the part of the show, I'm going to go into WSFTP. And you see this is a lot more text-based. This is not graphical at all as far as browsing or looking at graphics. This is just simply a way to connect to someone's computer, look around, and get your business done, and then quit. Not a whole lot of fanciness or not a whole lot of show to this. What WSFTP has a real handy feature here where they have different, it's kind of like an address book type of thing, where you can go and keep some of the sites that you go to most in a little address book here. But what I'm going to do, since the one I want to go to is not on the list, I'm going to click on New. And that clears out all these blanks here. And I'm going to go to a site. Profile name really does not have to be anything specific. You can just name it whatever you want to. I'll just put the Sunnet site. And I'm going to go down here by hitting Tab to host name. And this is where you have to know the address of where you're going. And that's one of the advantages of the World Wide Web, is that you don't necessarily have to know the exact address you're going to, because you can go through a series of links. But with using this program and with using FTP, you really need to know beforehand where you're going to go. And I was looking around a little bit this afternoon and looking for some good sites to go to, and I found one FTP site that had a lot of directories made available to the general public. And that address, I don't know if you want to write this down, but you may want to. The host name is ftp.sunnet.se. Now, like I said earlier, some FTP sites will require user ID and password as if you're logging into a regular plain old network. But a lot of these public FTP sites that want to make their hard drives available to the general public, what they have set up is an anonymous login. And usually what that is they make your user ID anonymous, spelled A-N-O-N-Y-S. Looks like that's how you spell it. I'm not the greatest speller in the world. Password for anonymous logon is usually your email address, just so they can kind of keep track of who's coming in, and I guess if there's any problems, they'll know who came in. So I'm going to type in my email address, edu, and you see it's just a list of stars. And we're going to log in. That should be all we need. We have a description, we have the host name, we have our user ID and password designated. So I'm going to click on OK, and that should start connecting us. And you'll notice down here you see lots of commands going quickly, and that's just the different technical things here that connect us, all the port numbers and IP addresses and all of that. It's not really something you need to be concerned with. Now, WSFTP is set up really neat, I would say. You see on this left hand of the screen, you're looking at the current directory you are at on your computer that you're using right now. Right now I'm on the network at Howard Payne, and I'm connected to the F drive. And here, if you want to change like your current directory and current drive, you can do that here on this left side. So let's go ahead and do that now before I start transferring any files, so I'll know I'll put it in the right place. I'm going to put it in my personal home directory, which is on my H drive. If you go to Howard Payne, you'll know what I'm doing here. But on this right side of the screen of this program, you see the remote system. And this is the current directory that you are currently connected to remotely. We are connected to ftp.sunnet.sc, and we're in the current directory, we're in the root directory actually right now. And here in this top box right here, you see a list of directories you can go into. Now, if you have experience with FTP, you know that the basic subdirectory you want to go into is pub, P-U-B. And that is simply that's usually the place where they'll put all their public files that they want to give access to everyone. And so that's generally the first place you want to go, is into the pub directory. And then they'll usually have some subdirectories here, and they'll categorize their files so that you'll know it'll be easy to find what you're looking for. And you see we have several different types of files we can get. A lot of these are programs, some of these are graphics files. You name it, I mean, they have lots of different kinds of files on here. Let's look around. PC, these are probably files that have to do with personal computers, and that, of course, is what I'm getting on with. Antivirus. You may remember a few weeks ago we covered viruses, and I instructed you all to go to antivirus sites and download current antivirus programs, and this would be one place where you could find some current antivirus programs. And you see we have several other subdirectories here. Down here is where the file names are. And once we get into a directory that has got files in it, you'll see that we'll have a list of files here to choose from. So let's just pick one real quick. I don't want to spend a whole lot of time on this site, but let me show you how you would transfer a file. I'm really into Windows 95 right now. I got that on my personal computer at home recently, so I'm always looking for more files to get to customize my setup. And it looks like they have taken down their files temporarily for Windows 95. They may be updating it, or who knows what they're doing now. Now, this right here, the ..dot directory, if you know DOS pretty well, you know that goes back to the previous directory. It goes back one branch. So along with your list of directories you can go into further down the tree, you can also go back using this .. Another way to go into directories with this program is by clicking this button right here, which is Change Directory. And you'll notice this is a lot like MS-DOS, so if you're good with DOS, this program will be no problem to learn. So I'm going to click on this, and here we have a dialog box asking us what directory we want to go to. And so say if I want to go back where I came from into that PC subdirectory, I could type /PC. Now, one difference from DOS that the internet has is the slash. You may notice that this is a / right here. And of course, if you know DOS, you use backslashes. But this is just a part of the internet that you have to get used to. But this is another way you can change to subdirectories. You can either go through and select it with the scroll bar in your mouse, or you can click on Change Directory and select what directory you want to go into. So let's try to find a file here, a small file that I can show you how to transfer. Let's see if there's any small game, or I'm not sure what we're going to find here, but let's see what they've got. So now up here you can see currently what directory you're in. So they keep it very user-friendly, so you're not getting lost in this long branch of directory. And you see we have several different file names, and usually what FTP site will have is one text file that will be an index. And that would generally be the first place I would want to go to find out what these programs are. Say for instance this right here, chiffr11.zip. Well, I have no clue what that is. It's probably some really neat game, but I have no clue what the name of the game is. So, but unfortunately this subdirectory right here does not have that index. Usually it'll be right here at the top. So I'm just, it's just anyone's guess what I'm getting here. For the sake of time, I'd like to transfer a text file, because I know the text files are relatively small and will not take a long time to transfer. So for our purposes, I'm going to transfer a file. Here, look at my local system. This is where it's going to go to. I'm going to transfer it to my H drive, which is my designated network drive here on campus. And I'm going to select a text file. Let's say I'm going to select Blake text. Probably has to do with the game Blake Stone. Now here's how easy it is to transfer an FTP. You have your file selected here, you have your current directory ready for it here, and all I'm going to do is click this arrow that says transfer this file over here. There it is right there. As simple as that, ladies and gentlemen. And because it's such a small file, we didn't even see any kind of dialog box telling us how many bytes it's sending. But if it's a large file, you'll probably see a dialog box here in the middle saying how many bytes have you received and how many are left, and maybe even an estimate of how much time is remaining. And so you can see how handy this is if you just want to go quickly to a place to grab a file, if you don't want to go through all the mess of waiting on graphics to load in Netscape. But this is a very handy program. I like the fact that you have a split screen here. You can see currently where you are in your personal computer, and you can also see where you are browsing the remote hard drive that you're connected to. Now, there is another way to use FTP besides just this program. There are also other FTP programs that are made similarly. A lot will have that split screen that I like so much. But you may be interested in knowing, and some of you will already know, that you can also do FTP from Netscape. And being an experienced internet user, I kind of consider that cheating. But I'm going to go ahead and real quickly, it's almost time for our break, but I'm going to go real quickly and show you how you would do that in Netscape. So I'm going to click Exit here. I'm going to press Alt-Tab to go back to my Netscape that was open in the background. And say I want to go back to that same FTP site. Now, here's what you do. Click up here, and instead of typing in a HTTP address, here's what you do. You clear out this whole thing, and instead of typing http:// like we normally have been doing this semester, here's all you have to do to designate that this is FTP. Type FTP:// as opposed to backslash. And then you just type the address that you want to go to, and we'll go to that same site, ftp.sunnet.se. Press enter, and after a few seconds we will be connected, and it'll look a little differently from what it looked like in that program WSFTP. But some people like this format better, because here you see if it's got this little icon right here in yellow, that means that's a subfolder or a subdirectory if you're a DOS enthusiast. And here's our pub subdirectory that we went in a while ago. And you see now we have all these subdirectories. So that's another way that you can go through and browse a hard drive using FTP. And so now I think we're going to take a brief commercial break, and when we get back, we're going to have Mr. White answer the questions you've been calling in. So we'll see you in a few minutes. Apparently the phones have been ringing off the hook, so we're not going to have time to cover some of the other ways you can get on the internet. I have a book here I would highly recommend. It's called Internet for Dummies. And if you're interested in looking at Telnet and some of those other programs that are out there besides the World Wide Web and FTP, I would read that book. I learned a lot from that book. And so I would recommend going through, and if you're interested in learning from the book and studying some on your own, that's a good way to learn computers.
I guess now it's time to answer some questions here. The first question is, should I buy a computer now, or should I wait for a better computer to come out? I'm sure you've heard that a new Pentium chip's coming out called the Pentium Pro, which will probably be out next fall. And you're probably thinking, well, should I wait till then to buy this better computer? My advice to you is just simply, if you want to wait to buy a better computer, that's what you will do, is just wait and wait and wait. There will always be a better computer coming out within 1 or 2 years. What you need to do is assess your needs as to what you want to use the computer for, then go and then buy it. Another question is, in DOS, file extensions have 3 characters, but they notice that in some places on the internet, they have 4 characters as an extent. Why? Well, in DOS, you have only 3 characters as an extent, and this is what you find on your PC computers. However, website computers, computers that actually are the hub or the host computers of the internet, work under an operating system called Unix. And this operating system allows more than 3 characters as an extension to a file. An example would be HTML. If you see those 4 letters after the file name, then this is telling you that this is an internet file that people can access.
It goes the same way with file names also. With DOS, you may realize that file names are limited to 8 characters, and you already knew that extensions were 3 characters. But also with Unix, you do not have the limit for neither the extension nor the file name, so you can have a long file name also.
Okay. I got another question here. This really doesn't pertain too much to the internet, but it is high technology, and I thought, well, I might as well go ahead and answer it. The question is, what is virtual reality? Again, this is something that's high-tech and new and comes about because of the computer. Believe it or not, I've experienced virtual reality, and from my own personal experience, it's like literally being in a cartoon, literally. What happens is that you put on a headset with a screen over your eyes, and it is movement sensitive, such that as if you're looking this way and you move this way, that the screen will change according to your movement. And it's like literally being in a cartoon. And another feature is that you may have a glove that's wired up and also sensitive to movement. So on this screen that's in front of you, if you look over there and you see a ceiling fan, and you look over here and you see a switch to turn on the fan, although it's not really there, but you see it like a cartoon, if you move your hand to that location in space and flip the switch, and you look over here, the ceiling fan is going to start turning. You might be interested in knowing that a lot of this high-tech stuff was developed out at NASA in their research labs.
We were lucky here at Howard Payne a year ago, or last school year. They somehow brought in a virtual reality setup. I'm not sure where they got it from or who owned it, but they had it set up at the main university center here on campus, and they allowed the students to go and experience that. And what it was is it was a computer game, and they had 2 different stations about, I would say, 20 feet apart, and they had, of course, barriers so you don't wander around and run into something. But they each had helmets, and you were actually inside a computer game, and you would have a plastic gun, and when you were in the world, you could look around and you would find the other person. It was a 2-player game, and you could shoot each other. And it was very realistic. I had a chance to do it myself, and at times you would even get dizzy because it's such a realistic world around you. You have headphones on your ears, and you're just looking around. It's really, like Mr. White said, it's really like you're in the world. So
you really like you're in
interesting
a
technology.
cartoon almost.
Right now, it's very expensive, so you will not see it around too often. But everyone seems to think that before too long, the price and the cost of virtual reality will come down to where it'll be very common.
By the way, if you're wondering where or why it was first developed, it was developed for the military, such as airplane pilots, astronauts, to simulate flight or flight simulations. Okay, moving along here, I have another question, and it is, how many computers are on the internet? Well, let's categorize 2 different types. You have the user computer, your PC, where you are actually accessing the internet, and then you have what are called website servers. Website servers are the computers that actually run the internet, contain the things that you access, and have that Unix operating system. There are about 6.6 million PCs on the internet, and there are, 40,000 website computers. That's 4, 0, and 3 zeros. That's 40,000. Now, here are some interesting statistics. In January 1994, there were 1,000 website computers. 8 months later, there were 3,000. A year later, January 1996, 40,000. Within a year, the number of computers increased by tenfold. I mean, you went from 3,000 to 40,000 in less than 2 years.
And it's still growing.
Yeah,
I mean, these figures that he's giving you right now are probably even outdated. There's more and more getting on every minute, every
Right.
second. There's more computers being added to the internet.
Yes, you're right. I am probably outdated because this figure of 40,000 is as of January 1996. Now, that's 8 months ago, and the yearly growth rate is about 100%. So right now, maybe there's possibly 60,000 website computers and maybe 12 million PCs.
5 months ago.
5 months ago, excuse me.
We're in May.
Right. But as you can see, it is growing fantastically. In fact, I heard on the news that by the year 2000, 1/3 of all the homes will have access to the internet. Okay, there were some questions about error messages on having problems. One was that you get a screen full of garbage while you're accessing the internet. What you might do is to check your modem speed. This may be your problem. There's a word called baud rate. You want to make sure that the baud rate of your modem matches the baud rate of the provider you're accessing. Another error message is host unavailable. Host is referring to that website computer that has that Unix operating system that you are accessing. What's probably happened is that that computer is down for maintenance, or they're having a problem with the computer, or too many people are trying to access it all at once. The simple solution, just try accessing it a little later. Another error message is host unknown. This is where you have to check the spelling of the website you're trying to access. Sometimes you may misspell the name of the site that you want, and well, you just got to be real careful. There's an old adage: computers are very unforgiving, and the slightest mistake, like a period instead of a comma, botches the whole thing.
You remember me typing in that anonymous a while ago. If I would have misspelled that by one letter, they would not have let me in that site.
Another question is, this person did try accessing FTP, then all of a sudden everything crashed. One of the things that you need to consider is when you're accessing the internet via your telephone, the use of a modem and telephone, that you have to turn off call waiting. Because if you have call waiting, this will interrupt the transmission.
Very important.
Yes. Another question is, what's snail mail? Yeah. You've heard of email, which is electronic mail through the internet, but snail mail, well, this is one of those little geek words that computer people are starting to use. Snail mail refers to the United States Postal Service because, compared to email, it moves at a snail's pace.
Now you know.
Now you know what snail mail is. Okay, another question is, what's the difference between a website and a workstation? A website is the computer that runs the Unix operating system that contains things that you access. A workstation is like this, your PC that you are working off of.
You remember in FTP program, I showed you how the left-hand side of the screen was the current directory of where we were coming in. I mean, the local computer here, which would be our workstation. The right-hand side of that FTP program was the website. What was the term they used? The website we were connecting to. So this is our workstation, and we're connecting to the remote site for the website.
Okay. Another question is, what is all that stuff in the locator at the top of the Netscape screen? If we can go to the Netscape screen and look at that locator, I'll explain it to you.
You mean the URL?
Right, the URL.
This right here.
Notice where the cursor is moving back and forth, that area up there. This is known as the Uniform Resource Locator. This contains the name of the computer you want to access and the type of service you want and any specific file that you want. Unfortunately, I think the writing's a little small for you viewers to see, but let me briefly describe it. From the beginning, at the beginning, you should see HTTP//. That indicates the type of service that you're requesting. HTTP is hypertext. That means you want text, graphic, pictures, whatever. You might see FTP, you might see the word gopher, you may see the word telnet. It just depends on the type of service that you want.
We were able to cover FTP earlier in the show, but we did not have time to cover the others like telnet.
Right.
Maybe another show.
Just a brief definition of what telnet is. It just simply allows you to log in to a computer halfway around the world, literally log in. After the FTP, HTTP / you'll see www. That means World Wide Web, and it just simply means I want to access some computer in the world. After www, you will then see some words or letters with periods. This identifies the specific computer that you're accessing.
Now, not all sites will have the www. Some might have www2, some might have just a completely another word. So you really know what you're getting into by that prefix, HTTP or FTP.
Yeah. But it looks like we're starting to run out of time, and I still have a few more questions to answer, but I guess this might give you an incentive to turn in next week, and I'll try to answer the rest of these questions.
We've got one more show. Next Thursday night, we'll be live again. We'll take a few more questions. We'll try to get all those in first. And what we'll do is we'll have a brief review, and then we'll cover briefly things to look for in the future and how this will affect our lives.
And believe me, our lifestyle is going to change beyond your imagination because of the internet.
So tune in next week, the same time, next Thursday night, 9 o'clock, Channel 10. We'll see you then.
Thank you for joining us here on Surfing the Net on Channel 10 of the Brownwood TV cable service. Be sure and join us again next Thursday evening as we continue to explore the internet with Gary White and Chris Dooley. Surfing the Net is a presentation of Howard Payne University.